The 40 acres of shoreline along the northern edge of Blackbird Lake were more than just a plot of land. They were a sanctuary of silence. Inherited from my grandfather, who had purchased the parcel in 1952, the property was a wild, untouched stretch of ancient pine, granite outcroppings, and water so clear it looked like liquid glass. My plan was simple and humble: build a small off-grid cabin to serve as a writing retreat, a place where the only deadline was the setting sun. However, the silence of the woods was shattered on the third day of clearing the foundation site. The trouble arrived in the form of a bright red golf cart winding up the gravel access road. A woman with a stiff platinum blonde bob and an oversized clipboard stepped out, surveying my land with the squinted eyes of a colonial governor inspecting a rebellious province. This was Brenda Harrington, the president of the Maplewood Estates HOA, a sprawling development of high-end suburban homes that bordered the eastern edge of my property. "I'm Brenda Harrington," she announced, her voice like a sharpened blade. "You're in flagrant violation of Article 4, Section B of the Maplewood Covenant. Construction on HOA Commons requires a full architectural review and a $5,000 environmental impact deposit. You need to cease work immediately and dismantle this structure." I wiped the sweat and sawdust from my brow, leaning on my shovel. "Nice to meet you, Brenda. But you're mistaken. This isn't Maplewood Estates. This is private land. It's been in my family for over 70 years, and it was never part of your association." Brenda let out a short, bark-like laugh, clicking her pen with aggressive precision. "Sir, don't be absurd. Maplewood owns the entire lakefront perimeter. This is community access land. You are squatting on HOA property, and I suggest you pack up your tools before this becomes a matter for the authorities." The 3-month siege. I tried to be the voice of reason. I invited her to look at my survey stakes. She claimed I had moved them. I offered to show her the deed. She told me she didn't look at unverified documents. Brenda wasn't interested in the truth. She was interested in dominion. Over the next 12 weeks, my peaceful construction project became a battleground of psychological warfare. Brenda's harassment was relentless and creative. I would arrive on Saturday mornings to find stop work orders taped to my lumber piles, not official county notices, but documents she had printed at home using an intimidating fake official header. She began bringing other HOA board members to the property line, pointing at my foundation and whispering loudly about environmental degradation and declining property values. One afternoon, a man in a neon safety vest and a hard hat arrived, claiming to be an environmental compliance officer. He began taking soil samples and telling me my septic plan was illegal. When I asked for his state credentials and a badge number, his bravado vanished. He retreated to Brenda's waiting golf cart and they sped off. It was clear she was hiring actors to intimidate me into abandoning the land. She photographed me constantly. Every time I picked up a hammer, I could see the sunlight glinting off a camera lens in the bushes at the edge of the HOA's actual boundary. Through the neighborhood grapevine, I learned she was telling the Maplewood residents that a criminal element had invaded their private beach and that she was the only one brave enough to fight for their rightful land. The final showdown. The escalation reached its boiling point on a hot Tuesday morning in July. I was beginning to frame the walls when the familiar sound of tires on gravel was accompanied by the discordant wail of sirens. 3 county squad cars pulled onto the site, kicking up a cloud of dust. Brenda was right behind them in her silver Mercedes, her face flushed with the fever of a final victory. "There he is, officers," she screamed, jumping out of the car and pointing a manicured finger at me. "The squatter. I told you he was building an illegal structure on our private common grounds. He's ignored every notice. Arrest him and clear the site." The lead officer, a veteran deputy named Miller, looked from Brenda's hysterical face to my calm expression. He walked toward me while the other 2 officers began cordoning off the construction area. "Sir, we have a report of criminal trespassing and illegal construction on HOA property," Miller said. "Do you have proof of ownership for this parcel?" "I do, deputy," I said. I walked over to my weatherproof job box and pulled out a heavy, organized accordion folder. "I've been waiting for you to be called." I knew she couldn't help herself. I laid the documents out on the tailgate of my truck: the 1952 deed, the certified 2024 survey, and most importantly, the original water and riverfront rights dating back to 1922. Deputy Miller studied the maps with a focused intensity. He looked at the legal descriptions, then checked his GPS-enabled tablet, and then walked 20 yards to the east, identifying a rusted iron pin in the ground. He walked back, looking at Brenda with a look of profound realization. "Ms. Harrington," Miller said, his voice dropping into a low, dangerous tone. "Do you know where the Maplewood Estates property line actually ends?" "It ends at the shoreline," she snapped. "We've used this beach for 20 years. We built the boat launch. We maintain the trail." "No, ma'am," Miller said, turning the map so she could see the cold, hard lines of reality. "According to the county recorder, your HOA property ends at the gravel access road. This entire 40-acre stretch, including the beach, the trail, and the boat launch your association spent $40,000 on, belongs to this man's family. He didn't move onto your land, Brenda. You and the entire HOA have been trespassing on his land for decades." The silence that followed was absolute. Brenda's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The deputy turned back to me. "Sir, this woman just filed a false police report and has been harassing you for months. Would you like to press charges today?" The great unraveling. The fallout was a catastrophic tidal wave. Word of the great land loss traveled through Maplewood Estates faster than a wildfire. The residents, many of whom were wealthy professionals, were suddenly faced with a terrifying reality that their private beach and expensive boat launch were actually someone's private backyard. They realized they had no legal right to the lakefront they had been promised when they bought their homes. The following night, an emergency meeting was held at the Maplewood Clubhouse. I didn't attend, but I could hear the roar of the crowd from my porch across the water. Brenda attempted to defend herself, claiming she had assumed ownership because the HOA had always maintained the area. The residents weren't having it. They were furious that she had never verified the property records before launching a crusade that now exposed the association to millions of dollars in liability. A unanimous vote of no confidence was called. Brenda Harrington was removed as president on the spot, stripped of her authority and her status in the neighborhood she had tried so hard to protect. I decided it was time for clear, legal boundaries. I hired a professional fencing crew to install a 6-foot-tall wrought iron boundary fence along the legal line, complete with high-visibility private property and no trespassing signage. I wasn't doing it to be a villain. I was doing it to protect my legal liability and my peace. Brenda, however, had lost her grip on reality. Her identity was so inextricably tied to her perceived power that the sight of the fence felt like a personal cage. At 2:15 a.m. on a rainy Thursday, my motion sensor security cameras alerted my phone. I watched the live feed in stunned silence. Brenda had driven her Mercedes across the grass and was repeatedly, frantically, backing her car into the new fence posts. She was screaming at the wood and iron, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. On her final attempt to tear the fence down, her tires lost traction on the muddy embankment, and her car slid backward into a deep, water-filled drainage ditch, high-centering the vehicle. Justice in the dark. The court hearing 2 months later was the final nail in the coffin of Brenda Harrington's social and legal life. I didn't have to say a single word in my defense. The prosecution played the 4K night vision video of the Mercedes rampage for the court. The judge, a woman known for her patience, watched the footage with an expression of weary disbelief. When the screen went dark, she looked at Brenda, who sat at the defense table looking small and broken. "Ms. Harrington," the judge began, "you spent months hiding behind the shield of a neighborhood association to bully and harass a man on his own ancestral land. You claim to be protecting your community, but this video shows a woman who is only protecting her own ego. You destroyed property, you lied to the police, and you turned a peaceful neighborhood into a war zone." The sentence was decisive and reflected the severity of the pattern. $12,000 in total fines and restitution to cover the cost of the fence and the restoration of the damaged landscape. 200 hours of mandatory community service, specifically assigned to the county's roadside maintenance crew. A permanent restraining order barring her from coming within 1,000 feet of my property or my person. Today, the cabin is finally finished. The sun sets over Blackbird Lake, and the loons have returned to the shoreline. There is no red golf cart, no clipboard, and no Brenda. The residents of Maplewood now use a small public access point 2 miles down the road, and a quiet, respectful peace has settled over the woods. It serves as a permanent reminder to anyone who walks the perimeter: a title on a clipboard is nothing compared to a deed in the hand, and arrogance, when fed by unchecked power, is the quickest way to lose everything you thought you owned. The end.